Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's December and it's holiday season. Consider a lot of the guests on Word Balloon as gift ideas because I really think a lot of the creators have new product, no matter what it is, whether it's a film or a TV show or obviously comic book, a graphic novel, whatever. And, of course, our regular sponsor, Aftershock, should be considered that way as well. If you have questions or comments about the show, reach me via email. Best way to contact me, john@wordballoon.com. Also, follow me on Twitter under John Wordballoon and on Facebook on my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening through the commercials. Yes, sometimes they repeat, but it is the holiday season, and I have no control over the repeaters. But that's how I get paid from them, is by you listening all the way through those commercials and into the show. We're coming back after one more commercial, and then we'll start things off. But as always, thanks very much for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I am so happy to welcome David Lloyd back to Word Balloon. It has been forever since I had my first conversation with David, and I've been meaning to have another one to really get into his company Aces Weekly, a digital anthology that he puts out, as it says, weekly. Pretty cheap for the weekly subscription package. It's under $1.50 a week. And it's great because it's very eclectic. It really does present a lot of different creators, a lot of European creators, a lot of creators that think outside the box as far as their approach to comics. And we talk about that, and he's pretty proud of what he's doing. He stopped drawing. He doesn't draw anymore. He doesn't even do covers or anything like that. David has found his creative itch is being satisfied as the publisher of Aces Weekly, and he's very passionate about it. You'll hear it in this conversation. Now, we do spend some time talking about V For Vendetta, and also one of his great graphic novels, Kickback, that I'm a big fan of. His work on war comics with Garth Ennis. I mean, these are some of my favorite David Lloyd efforts over the years. Of course, V For Vendetta. But, yeah, man, it's I'm sorry he's not around anymore as far as doing the drawing. And we talk a lot about that, and it's like, what's going on? I mean, you're so good, and he's got a huge following, so it's great to catch up with him and see what he's doing these days, and his perception of digital-only comics in this paper-obsessed world of ours, that, the shops and the Wednesday Warriors are still a huge part of the comic reading experience, and as they should be. I mean, they certainly provide a lot of money towards that. But is it in conflict for trying something new? I mean, Dave talks about that, and I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a lot of fun, and I thought pretty interesting and a little offbeat. But happy to have David Lloyd. Not offbeat that you won't understand what's going on. Just again a different point of view on today's comics market. David Lloyd on today's Word Balloon, brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon. Thank you greatly, League. For your support. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to put out a really fun, compelling show for you. Word Balloon is free, but if you like what you hear and you want to help out the cause, Word Balloon worth $1 a month to you? Is it worth the price of a comic book a month to you? I hope so. But you can subscribe via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on the ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. But thank you greatly for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. As we close out the year, lots of interesting books coming from Aftershock. Of course, our most recent Aftershock guest, Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, issue 4, comes out this Wednesday. Check it out. Think of Children of the Corn meets today's social media obsessed children, and see what you come up with in this obscure European town where the children have taken over. There's also Marguerite Bennett's Animosity, and Phil Hester's Stronghold, and Tim Seeley's Dark Red, and, Dark Arc from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, Bad Frequency from Juan Doe as well. Really great titles, incredible genre-bending ideas that I think will satisfy your itch as far as finding something new. An Aftershock book, a subscription would make a great present, or a graphic novel to a comic book reader who hasn't, strayed away yet from DC and Marvel. Give them something new. Give them with something that's from Aftershock. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Let's talk for a second about the features in Aces Weekly currently. You got Paul Rainey's Why Don't You Love Me, which I think is very Chris Ware, Jimmy Corrigan sort of style comic book telling. There's Reflection by Jochen Santullo, or Santuyo, a very cool, stylish crime noir that I really think you'll get into if you're a big crime comics fan. There's The Weird World of Wilfred Weed by Ben Bernard Smith, a really fun, bouncy, cartoony humor series. The Valkyries by Chris Geary. If you like 60s really cool action illustration, think of, some of the great runs of Tarzan from the 60s and Turok and things like that. Basically action without masks. The Valkyries by Chris Geary is definitely up your alley. Then there's Mr. Cuesta, La Morte de Cuesta by Phil Whitmore and Bambos Giorgio and Michelo Casey-Brid. I hope I'm saying those names right. But think of Don Martin Mad Magazine meets heavy metal, because it's sci-fi, but it's definitely with a bouncy humor take. But it's really fun sci-fi. And then there's Lightning 5 by Martin Cater, which I really like. It's very much in the Team America puppet sort of. It's basically super animation, like Jerry Anderson used to do with Thunderbirds and Stingray and like Team America, but in comic book form. It's almost a combination of Fumetti and Thunderbirds, basically, or Fireball X5. I mean, I love that stuff. I enjoyed it as a kid. I think it's incredibly kitschy fun now as an adult. And, man, I'll tell you, Lightning 5 absolutely captures that look and feel. All these series have Facebook pages or blogs and are absolutely worth your while checking out. And I have a feeling it may make you want to consider Aces Weekly. Again, pretty reasonable for a subscription. What a great Christmas gift to give a person a year of Aces Weekly. But let's get into our conversation now with David Lloyd, talking about this publishing concern that he has and his view of the comic market today, and also a look back at some of his big art accomplishments. David Lloyd on today's Word Balloon. David Lloyd, welcome to Word Balloon. Man, as I was just telling you off the air, this has been a long time coming. We did a brief video interview in New York at New York Comic Con, and I've been meaning to get you back ever since, so I'm sorry it's taken years, but it's great to talk to you.
Well, it's good to talk to you again, John, so, fire away. I'd be very happy to chat.
Well, I'm really excited about what you've been doing with Aces Weekly. About 7 years now that you've been doing it? 8 years? You tell me.
Yeah, it's September 30th, 2012. So,
wow.
Yeah, it has been quite a while. And actually, on the day that we actually began, I was in Colombia, and I suffered the first earthquake that I ever had.
Wow.
It seemed like it was only a very small kind of rumble, but I thought to myself, well, this is either good news or bad news to begin this thing. But it's so it's been a long time, but it's been a long struggle, and a bigger struggle than I really imagined it would be. If you want me to go on, I mean, the thing is that I just figured it was, getting together a whole bunch of great comic artists, especially comic artists and creators who people knew already, and instead of putting them on expensive paper and packaging them and doing all that really expensive stuff that comics have become known for now. I mean, let's face it, it's not 10 cents anymore.
Right.
Then, I thought if we get all those people together and we just put them online and we put them on screen, it's to say they're the same creators. We're not screwing with the comics. We don't do motion comics. We don't do anything like that. We just put that great comic art. We put it on screen. We take it off paper. We put it on screen, and we're using some great names.
Yes.
People that people know in the business already. And I thought, well, if we just put them on screen and they'll respond. But it's been much tougher than that, because it seems to me the need for paper and collecting and, I don't know, tradition and the way things are kind of like kind of has a hold on people that's very difficult to change. So, although we're doing enough to survive and get by, it has been a struggle, and it's the continual problem of comics on screen, that this desire for that thing that thing that people have to have and collect. It's become a real problem for anybody wanting to progress things in the area of storytelling.
Understood. And your format is an anthology, a weekly anthology of different creators and different stories. And there are short stories in there. There are stories that are serialized. I can appreciate that. And hey, man, you started around the same time as I remember Two Americans, Chris Robertson and Allison Baker started a digital service called Monkey Brain, and I remember Mark Wade's digital service as well. I mean, you're one of the pure digital survivors as far as offering this product digitally and everything. So no, I understand and I sympathize that it is kind of a struggle. How do you create awareness beyond, obviously I'm glad you're talking to my podcast, but obviously being on the newsstand, being in the Diamond catalog and whatever equivalents there are, I don't even know, I truly don't know how the European market works as far as, paper publishing awareness and stuff. So how are you able to make people aware of the product?
Well, digital is a completely different world because you're dealing with the internet, and in the internet there's lots of noise already. So this is the one. I think it's an advantage and a disadvantage. If you look at print comics, when you talk about the Diamond, the previews catalog, all this sort of stuff, you are still talking about an extremely limited area.
True.
I mean, how many comic stores? Well, there used to be, let me see, 300. More than that. I mean, there used to be lots more, but then, when the big collector, this is another thing that, I don't know how far you want to go into all this, but the thing is, in the 90s, there was this big collector bubble that burst.
Yes.
And at least 300 comic stores, I know, went out of business then in America because, all those... the history of all that, and that was a disgrace. That was a disgrace for the big two. The big two comic companies actually pushed that stuff, telling everybody that, they were, all these X-Men titles were going to be so valuable, and there were people putting them in safe deposit boxes.
That's right.
They would be, this is old stuff, that. This was a disgrace to the business, and they could only do it, or everybody could only do that because it was still a very limited market. How many comic stores are there in any city? Maybe 1, 2, 3. And then, this is throughout the whole of America. This is still a very limited market.
Agreed.
Of course, now you've got Amazon. You've got lots of ways of distributing comics now. But, the comics business is still stuck around those comic stores. You're still stuck around that distribution network, the monopolized distribution network, as we know of it as. So you're talking about a very limited market, which has its own problems. And, I mean, for me, from an artistic point of view, tragedy that comics are limited in that way because it's a fantastic storytelling art form.
Sure.
And, one of the reasons I'm so excited about what I'm doing is that, if I get the chance, I can reach thousands and thousands of people. I'm not able to do that the way I want to, because in order to do that, you need to build a very substantial base of readers so that you can expand beyond that. So,
sure.
I wanted to do that, but the thing is this. You asked me about how I try and get people to know about this. Well, I try and get people to know about what I'm doing through the usual means of social media, and the internet. But because the internet is such a wide area, you're competing with so many other things.
Absolutely.
And so it's very difficult for me to do that. I mean, I've hired promoters in the past who tell me, I know how to do this, I've got the answer, blah, blah, blah. They don't have the answer. And, in fact, when I started using promoters, I would give them money and say, go off and do what you say you're going to do. When I found out that they didn't actually do that, I now hire any promoter who says, I have the answer and I will do this, and they say, okay, go and do it, and then I'll give you some money.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's basically my viewpoint, but we are producing a very unique thing. Nobody in webcomics does what we do. Basically, what we're doing is we're doing an anthology magazine, such as it would be in print, but we just do it online. So
yes.
We have an anthology comics magazine that presents comics in exactly the way you would get them on a page, except we're landscape instead of portrait, because that way we cross formats in the computer. So it works in exactly the same form on your PC, your laptop, and tablet.
Yes.
But not your phones, of course. That's important. Not your phones, because that's a small area. But if you use landscape, which is a natural form of the computer screen, then you're producing just the same thing. But basically, what we're doing is we're putting it on screen instead of in print, and that way we save lots and lots of money. Because
sure.
If we did it in print, it would be incredibly expensive. You would have to pay the cost of the distributor, and even so, as we've discussed, you are still reaching a limited market.
Yeah.
Whereas with the computer, you've got a massive market of people who, maybe some of them don't even know how great comics are, and have never been near a comic store, and have lost touch with them since they were kids or something. Well, with the computer distribution, you can go all over, and you can not only can you go over the whole of America, if we're talking about America, but you can actually go across boundaries. I mean, if you do a comic in America, say, and you want to sell it in France, you've got to find a French publisher. You've got to have licenses. You've got to do all that stuff.
Yes.
Well, you don't need to do that if you're doing something that is actually on screen. I mean, the only complication, of course, is you've got to change your language, which is an actual digital problem that is not easily solvable. I mean, that's, without me rambling on too much, you would think that being able to change a language in a word balloon digitally would be easy, but it isn't. But if it was, imagine if it was, technically. I found nobody who can do that for me easily. But imagine if it was. You would be able to sell any story across the world without any barriers, without having to pay licenses to other publishers. Maybe that's the reason why it's so difficult, because nobody actually wants to lose any money. All those people who have a vested interest in print, they don't doing that. I mean, there is a kind of great egalitarian value to comics on screen and across the internet, which maybe is one of its problems,
Understood. Absolutely. There is the company, and of course they got bought by Amazon, Comixology.
Yep.
And is Aces Weekly available through Comixology?
We have 18 volumes on Comixology, and the reason why we don't have more than 18 volumes is because we were not making anything out of it. And
okay.
Comixology, we were not selling anything through Comixology. You can put the volumes out there, and you can try and promote them if you want to. I mean, on Facebook, we have a Facebook page which is Aces Weekly on Comixology, Aces Weekly at Comixology, which is kind of devoted to that. But basically, I don't push it. The reason why is that Comixology takes 50% of the cover price. Sure. So, what is the point of you trying to spend that time doing that? And especially when they don't actually, they don't sell them. They're not selling them for me for that 50% that they get. I mean, I put it there. I put our volumes there, that 18 volumes there, because it's a different format. It's a kind of PDF format, And also they have this thing called Guided View,
yes.
which, if anybody wants to read that stuff on the phone, you can read Aces Weekly on the phone if you want to with the Guided View. We are not designed for phones, and so I see that as just a reasonable extra that Comixology can give us. But as they take 50% of the price, and they don't actively promote us, and there's no reason they should. I'm not resentful of that. It's just the fact that it's not doing us any good. So why do that when and it's not doing us much good? I don't know how well Comixology do on a general level. I mean, Comixology were around for a long time before they made any money at all.
Yes,
they were around for years before they made any money at all. So, I value their existence because they have at least when you mention Comixology, that's digital comics. But it's not the perfect means, but it's a platform that I'm very happy to use, and but it doesn't do us much good.
No, I understand, and I can appreciate that it isn't cost-effective when, as you said, they take 50%, and they don't, no, you're right, they don't promote any specific publisher more or less, or if they do, I imagine that's another cost to put them on the front page or whatever, and, when you first get to Comixology to shop. Now, you present things in the anthology format, the serialized format. Do you have the right? Because I was hunting around your website and seeing if I could, purchase the collected version of some of the stories and stuff. Do you offer that on Aces Weekly, or is that really the creator's right to eventually collect and sell on their own?
Well, no, we don't do that ourselves, and I did at a certain point. I mean, quite recently, I've suggested to some of our creators if they do want collected versions, but I'm not talking about print. I mean, I'm talking about digital. If they did want to have the collected stories, because, as you say, some are serialized in one volume, but then they're multi-volume. There are some multi-volume stories, which can be collected, and I have suggested that if they wanted to do that, I could offer them. But I haven't actually gone ahead with that yet because I need to have more people who want us to do that, because it's easy enough to put files together. I mean, this is one of the great values of digital. When you talk about pages, you're just talking about files, man. That's it.
Right.
You just stick a whole bunch of files together, and that's your book. And it's so easy. That's one of the. I mean, there are lots of advantages to doing stuff like this online, but that's one of them. And so it can be done. But I don't want to do it and offer it as a service until we have a whole bunch of people that want to do that and are interested in doing that. But over and beyond that, which is, as I say, something that we could do, every contributor to Aces Weekly has an agreement with us that they stay with us exclusively for 2 years.
Okay.
So their particular story in any particular volume stays with us for 2 years exclusively. But after 2 years, they can go away with everything they've done and either collect it digitally and sell it somewhere else, or they can put it in print if they want to. I'm completely against print collections, as you know, you might imagine. But they can put it together in print, whatever they want to do, and that's only an agreement. We don't have any contracts with people.
Okay.
Everything's on trust with Aces Weekly.
Wow.
You trust people or you don't, and that's it.
Sure.
So this is an agreement. And so people can do whatever they like. But also, beyond that, if they want to sell it in another country, they can do it immediately. So suppose I have somebody has a story in there in maybe the current volume, 42. They can sell it to France right now, immediately, or wherever, or in another language. We just hang on to it in English language for 2 years, and then they can go off and do whatever they like with it. But the idea of collecting the individual stories, I will offer if we get enough people together to do that. But the other important thing in terms of that, John, is this. It's an anthology, and because it's an anthology, it's a kind of community thing. Mm-hmm. How do I explain this? We have 6 stories in each volume. Okay. And some of those stories are very conventional, and some of them are unconventional. I mean, if you've looked through the 3 samples that we have, you see there's some kind of wacky stuff and there's some conventional stuff. Now, the great thing about what we do is that we can have 5 stories that are conventional and 1 story that's really wacky. Yep. Now, the thing is that those 5 stories that are conventional are a kind of support for the really wacky thing that people may not ordinarily buy. Understood. And when we get the money, when we get the subscriptions from Aces Weekly, and when we sell back volumes, everybody gets the same. Everybody, so every one of those creators gets the same percentage of the deal. So nobody is fighting for, nobody's fighting for a chunk that they, it's a very communal collective. Yeah. And that's what allows me to produce some wacky stuff and conventional stuff, and over and above the fact that we're not spending thousands getting it printed and putting it in boxes and putting it on a truck and then paying the distributor and then going off to a comic store somewhere. The thing is, the great thing that everybody appreciates and values when I talk to them about Aces Weekly, even though they still want paper, like some insane addiction, However, I tell them the logic of it all. Listen, straight to you, Yeah. And when I'm talking to people about it, I say, look, I can draw a page of comics, and I can send it to you directly, Yes. Like that, immediately, But no, they've got to have it on paper. They've got to have a thing. They've got to have a thing they can collect and put in a bag. This is really actually restricting the art that is reaching the people. We're without knowing it, we're stopping other people appreciating how great what we do is, because we're restricting the distribution of it. We're restricting its reach, because we have to have it in print, Well, yes. I mean, when, people talk to other people, there's this whole thing about comics fans, nerds, geeks, all that sort of stuff. This doesn't exist in literature. Yes. Nobody, if you meet somebody and you say, oh, I really love Tom Clancy, I really love Lloyd, nobody's going to say, oh, man, you crazy guy? Are you some kind of nerd geek? We as comic readers, we've put ourselves in this box, this little exclusive box of being, in this stuck world of collecting and putting it in bags and stuff. We shouldn't be there. We're having, there's so much great stuff in comics, and it's like, and we're artificially restricting this because of this collecting thing. And it never used to be like that. Just face it, when I talk to people about this, I talk to them about newsstands in America. Yes. Upon the time when people would buy, romance comics were selling in their millions in the early 50s. Yes. People would just pick them up. It was like a part of the mass popular business. Like they'd buy paperbacks, they'd buy comics on the stand. It was not and they didn't have to collect them. They would read them, they would enjoy them, and and that was cool, and it was all good. Once the collecting thing came in, and that's a whole history thing. Once that collecting thing came in, and they ended up in comic stores, although the comic stores saved them in one sense, they made them into a niche market. And now, and once they became a niche market, they lost touch with the mass,
yes,
with the mass of America.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why we are where we are. But with the internet, you can get them out there again. Let's try and make them all the mass again.
I do know, and I agree with you. Also, I think, and you tell me if you feel this way, George Plimpton, great American writer, used to have the Paris Match. I don't even know if the Paris Match is still being published anymore. But it was a collection of articles and essays and even poetry. And, it was this great anthology of writing that did provide a variety of styles and formats. And as you say, when you've got your 5 traditional comics and your 1 experimental wacky one, I understand. And I appreciate that. I think that's great. But also I know, God, we're in the midst as far as consuming video. People like binge watching. They like to, certainly it seems younger tastes will sometimes go to, God, can I have the whole story at once? And let me, get through it in a weekend or something like that as far as video goes. And that's why I asked about maybe collecting the stories. But I appreciate what you're saying, and that's why I do think that, what you're trying to do is, keep things fair and keep things equal amongst the creators that produce your anthology collectively, and that they all kind of, reap the benefits in the same way. But I don't know. Again, it's the comic consumer. I agree with what you're saying about the collection aspect of comics. I was never like that. I'm a reader. I'm purely a reader. And then once I've read it, I donate my comics. I throw out my comics, whatever. I'll confess to that. But I just want to get the story. And that's why digitally it is a convenience to buy and read it on my screen and read it on my tablet or on my computer. And it's less of an expense. And, I appreciate the convenience of it as well. So, no, I'm sorry that it is such an obstacle. And, God, I hope, Word Balloon listeners will take a chance. Do you want to talk about some of the current stories that you have in the current volumes?
You just have to go, you just have to check out
the website.
You can, if you can go to the Facebook page, the Aces Weekly Facebook page, and my personal Facebook page, I advertise what is currently happening right now in any particular volume. But you have to. You cannot buy. The important thing to bear in mind about Aces Weekly, and you get all this if you actually go to the website and you read all the text on there and you see what we're actually doing. You do not buy individual volumes. There's 2 ways you can buy Aces Weekly. One, you subscribe. You take an ongoing subscription out, and it's £1 a week in any currency, right? So you take out a subscription. It's £1 a week in any currency, and for that £1 a week, you will get 20 pages. Basically.
Okay.
But you have to take out an ongoing subscription because that's our backbone. Our backbone is that ongoing subscription. So a current volume, which is 42 right now, that current volume you have to subscribe, and you get, once you've started your prescription, you get the currently running volume, which is a 7-week volume, and then you get volume 43 after that, and volume 44 after that, and volume 45 after that, just for that £1 a week subscription, which just keeps you running, and you can cancel at any time. So that's the way you subscribe, and you get Aces Weekly as an ongoing concept, 7 parts, 7 weekly, serialized volume constantly. The other way you buy Aces Weekly is when as back volumes. So as we're running volume 42 right now, all the other volumes, 41 right to number 1, they're all available as back volumes. You can buy them separately. So if, for instance, you like my work, you may, if you like my work, I've got a 21-page kind of crime noir story in volume 1, which you can buy for just $10.
Yes.
And you can buy that just online, and then you can buy one of the other volumes. I mean, for instance, if you like Herb Trimpe. I mean,
sure.
Herb Trimpe, the late Herb Trimpe, the great Herb Trimpe, did a story for us. He did couple of stories for us. So if you'd like to see some of Herb's stuff, you can buy the volume that Herb is in, and Jeff Vaughn.
Yes.
That stuff. We
Phil
have
Hester.
Mark Wheatley. Mark Wheatley's
yes, Mark Wheatley, absolutely, man.
There's everybody, and if you go to the website, you will see in previous volumes, you can actually see a whole list of all the volumes, and you can buy every single one of them, $10, just straight through PayPal. It comes straight to your door, and off you go. It's like, so there's two ways, but when a volume is running, as volume 42 is, you have to subscribe. So so there's the two ways you subscribe. But I mean, I always say to people, listen, it's a pound a week in any currency, which is like just $1.25.
Yeah, I looked it up.
Maybe.
It's $1.32 a week, which is nothing. God, that's going back to the old and you say that's 20 pages a week by doing it that way, correct?
Yeah, it is, and plus extras too, because this is there's so many advantages to digital. I mean, if you give extras in like a print magazine or a print comic, every page is going to cost you more with a print run, right?
Sure.
Every page is going to cost you more. When you do digital, there's nothing. It costs nothing because it's files, man. It's nothing.
Right.
Unless you have thousands of files, and in which case you need a bigger server. But from reasonably, you can give lots of extras. So, you've got extras. You've got layouts. You've got pencils, scripts. So you've got extras, and it's all. You have a password. It's always in the cloud. So you get a password, you subscribe. If you subscribe now, you just get 42, and you'll always have 42, and it'll always be there. Your password gets you everything, and you just get it, and it's in the cloud. You don't have to build any more bookshelves. You don't have to have any long boxes, with lots of comics, because it's just all in the cloud, and it's already for you whenever you want it.
I understand. No, and like you say, no, $1.32, man, a week. That's a great price. That's a ridiculous deal. I know Pat Mills, I think, is planning something similar, and I wonder if you've had any conversations specifically with him or others that are doing similar collectives like this. I mean, again, David, you've been doing it so long that we're all, a lot of us are aware of what you're doing, and certainly at conventions and stuff, you promote what you're doing and things. But yeah, have you had a chance to talk to other people, or did you talk in the past to a Mark Waid or some of the others that were doing this back when everyone was starting?
Well, this was initially inspired, first of all, by me talking to Pepe Marino, who was doing something like this way back before we started. And
wow.
That's what led me to want to try this. So
sure.
Pepe Marino was the guy who first started me off on this. But right now, I mean, I don't know what Pat's going to do, but I know that a lot of creators who are kind of like you would never getting into it. I mean, John Wagner's got a new story. Which I think he's doing as a digital. He's definitely doing as a digital version as well.
Oh wow!
I don't know what Pat's doing, but I know that one of the guy that Pat is working with now is a guy who actually came to his attention through his work on Aces Weekly. So that's something I'm quite pleased with too, because apart from us being kind of pioneering crazy people doing this stuff, it does give a lot of exposure to people who don't normally get seen. I mean, in fact, one of the great things I'm very proud of is that we have a global cast, and we are featuring some people in our pages that would not normally get seen outside of their own countries.
Sure.
And
yes.
And this is, I think this is great. We have people from Brazil, Uruguay, Spain, Poland, everywhere, and they're not going to be seen generally outside of where they are, and this is a global talent collection of people
Sure.
in this world, and it's like everybody's stuck where they are. How many Polish artists are going to get published in England?
Right.
Unless they're doing. It's like Brazilians. The only Brazilians who actually get out there are people who are hired by Marvel and DC.
That's right.
Well, this is totally insane.
Yes.
It's only because of this kind of it's almost a kind of how can I describe it? A kind of restricted. It's a very restricted and constricted market.
Agreed.
Only based on the fact that the market isn't there. Well, there is a market there if we put it in the internet.
Totally.
There's no market out there if you have to pay all these printers and distributors and stuff like that, because you've got to do some popular character in order to get this stuff out there. But if we can get rid of all this endless financial restriction, which does not do the art form any good, it just restricts it. It shrinks it down to this little nutshell of places that can afford to produce it. That's no good. This is my passion. Use the internet, get everybody out there, get all that talent out there, and free everything up.
You mentioned webcomics earlier. Do you ever go to the festivals? And I don't know what kind of festivals they have overseas in your area, but I know in America we've got the show PAX that features webcomics and things. Have you ever had just talking shop discussions with the people of Penny Farthing and some of the other webcomic collectives here in the States? And see, go on.
Well,
yeah.
no, we don't have any. We don't have any specific webcomics exclusive conventions here in England. Not that I know of. Obviously,
Okay.
There are webcomics elements in all the conventions, but
Sure,
there's nothing
sure.
specific. But I think the webcomics, that's all great, that's all healthy, but I don't think there's any specific. I think it's fragmented. I think everybody's doing their own thing.
Yes.
There are people who do webcomics and they're doing them for fun. They don't want to make any money out of them. Some people, do make money out of them because they keep them going for a long time, build loyalty, and end up selling advertising for them.
Yeah.
But it's such a disparate group of concepts. And it's not linked by any particular desire to only do webcomics. A lot of people doing webcomics successfully are doing them to lead on to other things that they're selling,
Sure.
as promotion for their illustration work. It's a very disparate group. It's not like I think I don't know how you can build any unity amongst it. I think it's great that it's a healthy sort of market, but everybody I've spoken to that does what they're doing the right way, and there's not a market. There should be a market that we can grow, and that's a very difficult thing. I don't know how we're gonna do that very easily. I don't have any firm thoughts on it specifically. I think one of the problems with it is that it's like people in comics generally. You know, there are some people that like indie comics and they'll never buy a mainstream comic, you know?
Yes.
And there are a particular group. There's a kind of fragmentation in comics itself, not just digital comics, which is kind of like they like to stick to what they particularly like and don't go outside that. And I think in webcomics there's an even a greater disparity amongst people. I don't know what the answer is towards, but I think the webcomics exist outside the general mainstream of comics, and I think what you really need is to somehow get the people who are in the mainstream, the regular mainstream comics reader, to free themselves from the reliance on paper. Because if you can do that, that's what I'm trying to work towards. But if you can do that, the acceptance of the mainstream comics audience is not so addicted anymore. And once you've actually freed people from that addiction to paper, then, you know, you can do anything. You can put comics anywhere and everywhere. And I think that's going to be the answer, to free the whole viewpoint of comics readership. But I've got no answer to that. I mean, if I had that silver bullet, I would be using that. But I'm still looking for that. But I think the world of webcomics per se is a great world, and I'm always interested in seeing what people can come up with to free themselves. Let me tell you what the complication is that I see from webcomics. A lot of people who are doing webcomics want to use the computer to do things with comics. It's the Madefire concept of adding sound effects, or let's do scrolling instead of flicking, or let's add some sound effects. And I don't know whether you've seen eMooks. Have you seen eMooks?
No.
Well, you should check out the Facebook page for eMooks. That's EMOOKS. This is an Italian company that's adding not only wants to add sound effects and music to comics, but also blow up the balloons. You have to, if you check out the samples on that, you'll see what they're doing. Now, I don't know how successful they are, but there's a lot of money that seems to have gone into that. And if people are responding to that, it's working. Well, I wish them luck, but it's not comics.
Sure.
It's like lots of motion. They're not comics.
Right.
They're not animation, and they're not comics. They're not one thing or the other. And for me, I think comics have been developed over decades to tell a great story in the way they should, and they work very well. And there's no point screwing with them.
Right.
There's no point screwing with them. And as you know from what you see in the Revases Weekly, we just put great comics on screen, not on paper.
Yeah.
And I think, talking about webcomics and other comics online, too many of them are in love with the fact that it's on a computer and not enough in love with the fact that you can put it on a computer. And
I know what you mean.
That's the key. The computer is not all, the screen of the computer is just a way of putting things out there for more people.
Yeah.
Not screwing with them, making it, the whole point of Aces Weekly is, they're easier to get, they look better, they're cheaper, and you don't have to go to a comic store. And, that's basically it. But it's still the same comics. We still tell stories in exactly the same way. And that, again, is the difference between people in webcomics per se and what we do. We're just the channel for people to get great comics, on screen, and they look great. And one of the other things I always say to people about this is that you can put them on your plasma screen. Put them on your TV.
Absolutely, yes.
For the first time, we can make comics big.
Yes, very much so.
It looks terrific, and
yes,
and so it's just it's just another way of just getting great comics, just quick, fast, cheap, looking great. What can I say?
No, I agree with you, and you're right about how great the pages look from a resolution standpoint.
Oh yeah,
and especially on big screens. I know exactly what you're talking about. And also, as you say too, you're really exposing all these different creators from different countries, and really I think that's excellent that you're doing that, and it's giving them a wider platform. And also, it's funny, I haven't heard of this Italian company you're mentioning, but like Madefire, and also those initial efforts by even DC and Marvel with motion comics and some of the tricks that they tried to do, as you say, just kind of playing more with the computer rather than just presenting the art for art's sake and having it just look really good on a screen versus on cheap paper. No, I get what you're saying, and I'm shrugging. I hope you find that silver bullet, David, because I think you're doing a really cool thing, and I want more people to be aware of it. That's one of the reasons why I've been meaning to talk to you, and I'm glad that we're finally having this conversation regarding Aces. But I also want to ask you about just you as an artist as well. I know this has been your main thrust for several years now. I mean, really since the existence. And as you say, you've got the one story in Volume 1 on Aces, if people, want to see something that you've done in the last couple of years. But I, as a fan, I'll say we miss your art as well. And it's truly,
well,
that.
That's very kind of you. I really, and I don't have, this Aces Weekly is that's my thing now. I don't do anything else. And sometimes people say, "Well, look, don't you miss it?" And I don't know. I actually don't know why I don't miss it, but I don't. I mean, I do. The only drawing I actively do now is whenever I go to a lot of events, and I'm a very lucky person. I'm invited to lots of events all over. And whenever I go, I introduce people to Aces Weekly through these cards. We have these coded cards that give people access to one volume of Aces Weekly, and that's the way I introduce people to it. But when I sell them one of these cards, which comes at the cost of a volume of Aces Weekly. I do them a sketch as a sort of like a thank you.
Oh wow!
So I do. That's the only drawing I'm doing now. I'm doing sketches for people along with these cards. But I can't honestly say I don't actually miss it. I mean, I think maybe because I'm still being creative. Maybe that's it. When you're actually you're privileged enough to see some of these great contributions and artists who come through Aces Weekly, and you're putting their stories on screen. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all that creative need I have, that I'm actually showing some of this great stuff, and we have so much great stuff that we're showing, and some weird and wacky stuff. That's the whole point. As I said earlier, we have a mix of the weird and wacky and the conventional and everything. But that in itself is good too. It's like because we can do that. But so I don't feel the need to do any. I mean, anymore. And I mean,
Okay.
I have done a lot, John. I mean,
Yes, you have. Yes.
I just, I guess, I thought, I look, it's sort of like, I've done a lot, and I've done a lot of things, and so, it's not, I haven't got this. There's not this big thing in the back of my head saying, "Oh yeah, but I really want to do this. I've got this big plan, So I don't have that. It's just, it's all done as far as I'm concerned, and I just, thank you for wanting to see more.
Well,
But,
no, and I'm glad that you are being satisfied creatively with what you're doing with Aces Weekly. And God, what an extra bonus! So make sure when you see David at a show that you take him up on that. And that's a hell of a deal to get a David Lloyd sketch and everything for the price of a volume of one of the Aces Weekly volumes. That's fantastic, man.
Yeah, that's what I do every show now. So
that's great. That's wonderful, man. Well, and also, do you mind if we keep talking? Can we talk about some of the old comics for a second? Some of the standouts that
Yeah, sure. Carry on, man. I'm no problem.
Excellent. Well, obviously V for Vendetta. I mean, what a wonder. That is truly my first time I was aware of your work when DC started reprinting it. And when you first created the story for Warrior, you and Alan. What can you tell us about the genesis for V for Vendetta?
Well, that would be a very long story. I mean, I will, if I miss anything out, you can, if you've got the graphic novel collection of V, which I guess you must have, if you've got the, you just got the individual issues, or you have the collection?
Oh no, I remember when the individual issues were coming out, but I have the trade. I do have
Okay, well, in that case, you'll know that at the back there's an article.
Yes.
There's an article. Unfortunately, I get this answer to this question a lot in abroad, and often the.
I hope I'm not boring you by asking the question.
No, it's all right. It's just that I can never sort of say to people, like I've just said to you, well, there's an article in the back, because in some of the reprints, they don't use the article. Whether they want to save space or not, I don't know, but they don't. In some places they do reprint that article, some places they don't. But anyway, I mean, the thing is, I guess, what happened with how V for Vendetta got into Warrior is this, because the editor of Warrior I'd worked with when he was an editor at Marvel UK. Marvel UK had a British office, and I worked with that editor there on Doctor Who magazine, and I did some also in a comic called Hulk Weekly. I did something called Night Raven. Night Raven was I think you know about Night Raven.
Yeah, tell people about
Night Raven was a masked vigilante crime fighter in Prohibition era in America, and I was asked to visualize that character and do that for this editor at Marvel UK. And when he left Marvel UK and set up his own magazine, his own independent publishing company and magazine, Warrior, he wanted me to do another masked vigilante crime fighter that was like Night Raven, because he knew how well I'd done that, and he thought, well, can you do one for me like that? And the original plan was for me to write and draw the whole thing. But by that time, I'd worked with this genius called Alan Moore, and I thought, well, I can do this, but I think, if I get Alan on board for this, I'm sure it'll probably be much better. So I got Alan on board. Alan was actually already on board the magazine with an update of Marvel Man, which I'm sure a lot of people know about now.
Absolutely.
And which became eventually Miracle Man, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But anyway,
Yes.
the thing is that, you know, that was a big pet project of Alan's. He really wanted to do an update of Marvel Man, which he was on board to do at Warrior. So, but he was very happy to come on board with this very basic embryonic character of a masked vigilante crime fighter for Warrior. And we worked through a couple of ideas. I didn't want to do anything that was like, you know, set in in the past or anything. So we settled on something that was going to be a kind of modern-day take on it. And then after a bunch of sort of like general discussions, we ended up with this character who was in a kind of future fascist Britain.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it was like the model of it was like Germany in the 30s. That was basically it. It was like,
okay, sure.
You know, Britain becomes a fascist state like Germany became a fascist state. And our hero is somebody who was in the concentration camp, escapes the concentration camp, and vows vengeance on the system and the
Yes.
government and the people who put him there. But that was the basic character, and we didn't know any more motivations or anything of greater depth. And then I just had this crazy idea that came out of nowhere of making him like a resurrection of Guy Fawkes, which was just, you know, it's just one of those ridiculous accidents of, you know, where you're just sitting quietly one moment, explodes with this ridiculous idea. And I ran it past Alan, and he said, yeah, sounds great. And from that came all that stuff of blowing up the House of Parliament and the anarchy concept. But that's just how things happen, creative. This is, you know, and I always say this to people when I'm talking about anything, any story or anything. It's so much of it is accident. So, you know,
Sure.
Something that's sort of like, you know, planned from the beginning, and, you know, A goes to B and B goes to C and C goes to D. That's going to be dead. That's going to be dull. But if you just start off something and then you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and that was a great thing about V in the early days. The early days were experimenting, and a lot of things that happened in those early days of V happened by accident because we had time and we were experimenting, and it all turned out great. But so, you know, there's lots more to say about it, but you know, that's just your basic nutshell of it.
That, you know, and maybe another time we can talk more and everything. But as far as right now, that was terrific. And what I find amazing is how much people still turn to the Guy Fawkes mask now in current demonstrations. And honestly, David, excuse me, even a couple of months ago when the weather was warmer and stuff, downtown Chicago, there was a demonstration, and there was a dozen or so people in Guy Fawkes masks. And I mean, just the new awareness of returning to the persona of Guy Fawkes in protest, I find fascinating.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, and obviously I'm sure the movie helped the awareness as well. I've asked Dave Gibbons in the past about his experience with Watchmen and the movie experience. How was your experience with the V movie?
Well, I'm very fond of that movie. I mean, and whenever I talk to people about it, I always describe it as another version of V, because the changes that the Wachowskis made to it. But I supported it because, you know, when I was sent the script, I knew it would make a good movie, and I always say to people who ask me at any point about the possibility of it making a movie, and I always say to people, look, as long as they make a good movie, you know, as long as it's a good movie. And, you know, when you're talking about doing something, you're never guaranteed of anything, but as long as somebody makes a good movie of it, and when I saw the script that they were going to use, I knew it would make a good movie. And, you know, the Wachowskis are a big fan of V way back, and even though they wanted to add some of the things that they felt and they wanted to put over in their version, they still did a hell of a great job on it, and I'm glad they ended up doing it, because it could have been in much worse hands, and I'm glad they did a great job of it. But as I say, I always describe it as another version of the that still has, the heart of the book. That's the important thing. The important thing about V is the heart of what it is talking about, and what its message is, and that's still in there in that movie. And I'm very, very happy that it worked out as well as it did.
Well, and also, when you guys were making V, I know there was, and I remember this from the article, the fear of the Margaret Thatcher England was clearly on Alan's mind. And also I'll tell you, it was chilling. And I remember even in the 80s hearing about the closed circuit cameras then and thinking, wow, that's pretty oppressive. And here we are in the 21st century with Google satellite maps and the ever present and globally of cameras everywhere. It's so, isn't it odd that we're, I think, kind of benignly accepting that as a society, and there aren't as many people upset about it. I mean, I'm even a fan of back in the 60s, Patrick McGowan and The Prisoner.
Yeah, of course. Well, actually, The Prisoner is instrumental in V. I don't think V would exist without The Prisoner.
I suspect it, yeah.
Because that whole message of the individual,
right?
That's fundamental to what V's about. So, yeah. But this whole thing about what's the word, surveillance and cameras. Those things are only bad if you have an authoritarian government.
Right.
It's secondary to the people's values. The people just have to make sure there's no authoritarian governments, because if there's no authoritarian governments, there's nothing to fear from all the surveillance. In fact, let's face it, we know very well now, over many years, that CCTV has helped us catch criminals.
Sure.
People who chop up their wives and things
Absolutely.
like that, and other things. But, authoritarian governments, they will always find a way of targeting you. And even if there were no CCTVs, the police still take pictures of demonstrators.
Yes.
They've got their movie cameras taking pictures of demonstrators, and now they're initiating facial recognition, which is, all these tools, all technology is not bad in itself. It's only bad when it's used by totalitarian, authoritarian regimes. And that's the important thing to remember. And the most important thing for people, especially in this period of politics, is that people should not vote for people they know are authoritarian-minded. And you have experience of that, and just as we are suffering experience of that right now. But you can't teach people not to be stupid. And and if they're going to fall for the temptations of liars in exactly the same way as they fell for the temptations of liars in the 30s with Mussolini and Hitler and all that, if they're going to fall for that, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just it is the tragedy of politics, in one sense, is that we're stuck with the ordinary people who've decided often to put their vote in the wrong box.
Yes.
But, that's just the way things are, and you just have to hope for people that will wake up when they need to wake up. I mean, you talk about Margaret Thatcher in the talk about the origins of V. When we began V, Margaret Thatcher was not what she became. When we began V, it was in 81. Margaret Thatcher had only been in power since 79, and she was not exhibiting those very draconian viewpoints that she came to adopt later.
I see.
V was really based on fears about the rise of the radical right wing, as specified by the National Front.
Okay.
Real fascists, real Nazis. That was what led us to produce V. Margaret Thatcher just came about later, and made us fear even more. But we didn't begin with that. And if you look at British politics at the time, me rambling on about the ordinary person. Margaret Thatcher got into power because she manipulated the ordinary person. She manipulated the working class.
Yes.
She promised them things, and they fell for it. All politicians do that. We all know
Absolutely.
that. But Margaret Thatcher was a queen of that. She initiated the concept of privatizing our utilities. Gas companies, electricity companies, we owned those. We owned, as the public, we owned them. She sold them. She privatized them and told the ordinary working person that they could get shares, that they could own shares. Of course, they could own shares in these companies, but not in the way that the big shareholders could own shares.
Certainly.
And those poor people who were sort of like seduced into the concept of being shareholders after being ordinary working class people, they bought those shares and then they had to sell them afterwards because they were too poor to hang on to them.
Yep.
But Margaret Thatcher managed to seduce the ordinary working man and woman into believing that they could become part of a great conservative Tory right-wing world, and they fell for it, and and people are still falling for it. They're still falling for lies from people who have money. People with money will always lie to get more money and to seduce more people who can give them more money. And the ordinary working people don't have the education to resist it, and that's how all these terrible things happen in our so-called democracies. So
understood, yeah, man. Truly, I spoke to, I don't know if you know the American basketball player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
No.
I had him on the show in the last couple of years, and truly, you're about 15 years or so older than me, David, and I appreciate that kind of perspective because that's what people who've seen this happen before, when it happens again, can provide. And with Jabbar, it's the matter of some of the social conflicts that we're dealing with today, and I appreciate your perspective on the economic challenges. And again, the seduction of going to a working class and saying, hey, you can be just like us and be rich too, and it's an empty promise. It's seductive and usually a lie. And and unfortunately, like we said, the wheel turns, and we're kind of facing those same issues. Both you in the UK and us here in the US. So I believe me, I hear you.
I wish people would. I don't know how you're going to change things because it seems to go on. Yes, it just seems to go on and on and on. That people are being seduced by these things over and over again. I mean, your whole crash was based on people buying when they had no credit. They were led to believe that they could buy without having any credit, and then suddenly finds out, oh man, you mean I have to pay for this? And
right.
It's like it's just unbelievable. It's like how can it be allowed? It's somebody is just not taking any notice of it, and the people who have all the money, they never suffer. Nobody ever goes to jail after this. It's always the poor people that end up losing their houses. Nobody goes to jail. I mean, did anybody go to jail after 2008? I don't remember. Did anybody go to jail?
No, it's no. And in fact, we have good journalists like Matt Taibbi at Rolling Stone pointing that out, that all the economic crashes of 2008. No, I mean, there might be a couple CEOs and things, but no, a small percent, if that. And no, the banks that caused the problem move on and continue to operate and are able to operate. And in fact, a lot of the regulations that were put in to safeguard this happening again have been dismantled in the last couple of years. And it's like, again, they're not only getting away scot-free, but the few safeguards that were put up to avoid it happening again, they get taken away as well. So no, it's sick. It's, again, and it's because they elect people that believe in deregulation above all, that no sort of regulation is good, and that's, of course, ridiculous. But we can get off of politics. I mean, obviously, you and I, we certainly agree on this subject. But I'll tell you, when you and Garth Ennis did your war stories, I was always so excited to see them because David, they're beautiful, and I really appreciated learning about so many different war stories beyond the broad strokes of the various conflicts, and I mean, really. God, I hope I still haven't talked to Garth. I hope to, when I do eventually talk to him, to tell him as well. But I know you did a couple of those in the early 2000s, and I thought those were beautiful books as well.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there was the only drawback with those was that they needed a lot of reference material. Even though they were enjoyable, like everything I do is enjoyable, they have a fraction less enjoyment attached to them when you have to, use a lot of reference. I mean, Garth sent me with the Lancaster bomber book. There was a whole model book that had the inside and outside of Lancaster bombers. In a lot of detail, not as much detail that I had to. I had to go to the Imperial War Museum, to the RAF Museum.
Wow!
And actually look at them and check it and take photographs from inside the cockpit and everything. Because if you're telling a story about a real war with a really serious story, you have to get everything right because otherwise you're not. It's not a cartoon. It really is it's just like it's a drama on paper, and that's what you're doing. And so that was and when you do something like that, it does take away because you're sitting there with and actually I got one of those kits, Airfix kits. So I actually built a Lancaster bomber. But I didn't stick it together completely. I've used sellotape and stuck it together so I could use it for the shape and look at it. But you have to do that. So you've got that on one side, and then you've got photographs on the drawing board from here, and then reference. So what I used to do when I did that story, I would do all the panels that I didn't need reference for first, and then I go back and do all the ones that needed reference because that way you save time. You're doing, you're doing a lot of the panels that don't need reference, and then you go back and do the ones that do need that. But they were great stories, and I mean, Garth's great. He's really dedicated to that war stuff and the reality of war, not that sort of like take that Fritz school of war story,
Yeah. No, they're really great, and I don't know the last time if and when DC collected them, but I hope they collect them again. And then also I wanted to ask you about Kickback, because I really enjoyed that just a couple of years ago. Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Your fine crime graphic novel. And, I don't know how much of your old stuff, David, you have the rights to republish yourself. And as I know your aversion to paper, but, is that any sort of stuff that you would consider representing either as a whole graphic novel or even serialized again?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I'll just say something about War Stories you just mentioned. Garth actually owns the rights to those now, and I think they're with another publisher. Because it was another publisher. I think it was, what's the name of it? I can't remember the name of it now.
Well, I wondered if Aftershock, I know they're doing some Garth stuff, and I don't know if they were reprinting his old
somebody
stuff.
Somebody else.
Okay.
Anyway, but so, I think Garth's got the rights to those now, so it wouldn't be DC. As far as Kickback's concerned, if you know anything about Kickback, you may know about, I had lots of big problems with Dark Horse over that. I mean, I didn't
know, no.
No, this was a common, I don't know whether to go into it again. Dark Horse really dropped the ball on that book. It was, the English language, okay, first of all, Kickback, I really wanted to do a crime thriller that was like my favorite crime movies, so that was the initial, and I always wanted to do my own book, and anyway, I won't go into how it got done, but anyway, the first publisher I sold it to was a French publisher, small publisher, called Carabas. And and I'd worked with him before, and he trusted me completely, and he trusted me. So, I could just tell him the basic idea of it, and he let me run with it. And so that was the first publisher. And the reason I chose France anyway is because at that time in America, crime books were not selling at all. I mean, I think there was just stray bullets, and that was it. This is before Sin City, before anything. But in France, of course, they love detective. They have all kinds of stuff. So
sure,
I could do it there. So anyway, the first publisher was France with Carabas, and because it was a small publisher, they couldn't promote it very well. But anyway, it was good because it was published then. And then I sold it to Spain because I was working with them at the time, so I sold it to Spain. But of course, my big main audience was, of course, America or the English language.
Yeah,
and I, like an innocent, gave it to Dark Horse because they liked it, and and I thought, well, they're the third biggest publisher in America, and they like my stuff, and they know who I am, know what I do, and I thought they treated it very well. As it happened, they published it, but they didn't tell anybody about it. All they did was have one page in previews, and that was it. Wow. And I was the guy who did V for Vendetta. And this was in the same year as the movie came out.
Yes.
And they did not do anything with that book at all.
Wow.
And in fact, this is almost inexplicably stupid of them not to do anything about it. When it was actually published, it was published in the same month that the DVD of V for Vendetta came out, and they did nothing with it. I think they gave more publicity to King Kong, the adaptation of King Kong, the movie, than they did with my book.
Wow.
And I was astounded. I had no idea they would be so stupid. And because of that, I had to initiate my own promotion. What I did, I got in touch with DC and Dark Horse. I said, look, I want you to finance me on the conventions. DC were very happy with that because, I was, one of their star writers, so they gave me some money to do that, and I got a chunk from Dark Horse because I guess they realized how stupid they were. So I did a string of conventions up the East Coast, Baltimore and places like that, and went over to Los Angeles. Also, I called every single comic store in America and every single comic store in England and know that 2/3 of those comic stores didn't even know that Kickback existed.
Wow.
And to this day, that is a wound that has never healed. Because,
Jeez.
I mean, a lot of people don't even know that book exists. They've seen it. They don't know about it. And I was very proud of it. And Dark Horse completely and absolutely destroyed me on it.
Jeez.
And I still don't know why. I don't know why they were so stupid. Maybe I don't know why they were so stupid, but they were stupid, and it really marked me, and I still feel badly about it. I mean, I do own the rights to it now because although I gave Dark Horse a 5-year contract for it, after that 5 years, I grabbed it back and I sold it on to all the countries I could. So Greece, whatever. But you can never get that back, ever. I mean, and it's like, you can never claw back. Once, it's like a movie, right? It's like, and let's face it, in the movie industry, everybody knows about all this. Your promotion budget and your promotion priorities are fundamental to any movie, whoever's behind it. And if you don't put that behind it and try and get it back later, it's too late. And Dark Horse just destroyed me on that. And, I used to say to people, if Dark Horse went to the dogs the next day, I would dance on their grave. Because I felt so bad about it. Because it's your career, man. This is like, this is your livelihood. And they just, for any company to treat you so badly, with such, I don't know, inexplicable stupidity is like, And I'm glad to say that everybody who's seen it, and you like it, and everybody who sees it, they enjoy it, and I'm very happy with that. But there should be a lot more people who've seen it. And in terms of me of doing anything else with it, if I do anything with it again, it'll probably be, it will definitely be digital. I mean, I will just adapt it, and I will make it a digital version. Well, already, actually, as a matter of fact, it's already, you can actually get it digitally now. Anyway, there's a company called Sequential that specializes in doing digital books. They actually have it so that you can buy it digitally, and it actually has a lot of extras. It has a part commentary by me on the book, so you can get it from there digitally. So already, but but because I have the rights to it still, I would if I do anything with it myself, I will do that.
Well, I understand that your creative juices are towards what you're doing as a publisher with Aces Weekly, but David, I don't know. I mean, like I said, it just seems. I even did a search for it on Amazon to see where it was, currently and stuff, and obviously it's out of print, and it's the kind of thing that you can get ridiculously cheap for a hardcover. But I'd rather see you get the money, and it seems a lot of people when it's an anniversary of an old book or something, they're able to represent it and do it with, as you say, what's available now on this new digital version with commentary, and I'm sure you've got process pages and things like that in there, and script and the like. And like I said, David, I'm thrilled with what you're doing with Aces Weekly, but we miss your art, and again, I never want anyone to do what they don't want to do, and if I can appreciate, I know how much time it takes to do a book and go page by page, or whatever, as much fun you might have still drawing or not. So I can understand that as we get older, not wanting to do the grind anymore.
But no, it's got nothing to do with the grind, man.
Oh, pardon me.
No,
well, pardon me. Yes.
Please don't take this as the last dying rays of the pencil of the pencil crawling across the page. No, it's got nothing to do with the grind. I mean, it's not absolutely nothing to do with the grind. It's just that
desire.
If you don't need to do it, you don't need to do it. If you're doing something that there's an important thing in life is passion, man. There is,
yes, sir.
There is no point in doing anything if you're not passionate about doing it.
Agreed.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, right now, I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm not passionate about picking up the pencil and the brush and doing another one of those. So it's the passion is still there. It's just not exactly in the same place that it used to be.
Okay, all right. I know, and I appreciate the clarification. That's great, and I understand. Well, hey, honestly, you've been very generous with your time, and I really appreciated this conversation. It went in directions that I wasn't expecting, and I'm glad they did, because it's great to get to know you better through this conversation, and I'm really happy to help promote Aces Weekly. So we direct people to, it's acesweekly.co.uk?
Yeah, .co.uk. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking it's .com, but it isn't. It's specific because we're British. It's www.acesweekly.co.uk. And if you go there, you'll get to the website and read every bit of text on there, and it tells you everything what we're doing. And also, there are 2 Facebook pages, Aces Weekly at Comixology, and also Aces Weekly. Facebook page of Aces Weekly, and of course you can visit my personal page, which is David Lloyd, and there's also David Lloyd, artist and publisher. So any one of your listeners who wants to sort of like explore what's happening, but with Aces Weekly, it's the Aces Weekly Facebook page, and Aces Weekly Comixology. That'll tell you everything you need to, and just go to the website and just check it out. I mean, we got free samples on there.
Yep.
So you don't have to buy a volume to actually check it out. But it's always good to buy a volume just as a sample, because that shows you how it reads. And just check it out, and if you like it, try it. And as I say, it's a very reasonable price too.
Agreed. And truly, man, thank you for your contributions artistically and from the publishing capacity that you've done to the comics world. It's great. And as a personal note, honestly, David, I have no idea how you do it, but every year you send me this very nice little happy birthday, John, and it always tickles me that I'm like, oh, that's very nice that David Lloyd is reaching out and wishing me a happy birthday. So
listen, man, Facebook reminds me,
Yes.
And if Facebook reminds me, I'm very happy to sort of like, because it's like, that's it. I mean, we what are we here for if not to say hi to friends?
Well, it's greatly appreciated, and truly, man, that's why, as I said, we only did that one video interview, but I had such a great time talking to you, and I've been this lifelong fan that I'm like, God, I got to get David back on the show. So every birthday wish, it was like, oh, man, I got to get him on the podcast. So I'm so glad it's finally happened. And truly, hey, you're welcome back anytime, David, honestly, to any time to help promote Aces Weekly and other conversations. It would be wonderful to talk to you again.
All right, well, thank you very much, Sean. It's always good to talk to you, man.
David Lloyd and Aces Weekly. You should really check it out. There are preview pages on Aces Weekly, but also all of the creators there do have Facebook pages and websites and blogs and such, so you can really check them out. If you check out the titles and dig further, you'll find out exactly what kind of comics they all represent, and it's a great collection. I really do like it, and I like the diversity that David offers, but also I think he's a good curator of all this stuff, and it's a ridiculous deal, man. I mean, it's less than $1.50 a week to do Aces Weekly. Make a good Christmas gift. I'm always happy to have guests on that are selling something that I think, especially during the holidays, would make a good Christmas gift. And I would think a year's subscription to Aces Weekly would fit that bill quite nicely. Thanks a lot, David Lloyd, for coming on. I look forward to our next conversation. And thank you for listening to Word Balloon today. Brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon, the subscribers to Word Balloon. Thank you, League, for your support. Go to patreon.com/wordballoon or click on the Patreon ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics, It's a great December for them. They're going to close out the year with some really great books, including this Wednesday, Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, issue 4. Pretty cool. Also, look for Animosity by Marguerite Bennett. And, of course, Dark Red by Tim Seeley, Dark Ark from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, Bad Reception from Juan Doe, Night Temporal from Cullen Bunn, Horde, the great graphic novel from Marguerite Bennett, a great horror graphic novel. Lots of great gift options at Aftershock Comics for either graphic novel purchases or subscriptions. Turn somebody on to a new series or check out one of their great graphic novels. You know, these are the creators that you respect. Phil Hester, Garth Ennis. Amazing creators. We talked about Garth today with David Lloyd. Really, check out the selection of Aftershock Comics at their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening. More Word Balloon coming this week and more throughout the month of December. Thank you for all the great birthday wishes. All of you were great and wonderful emails and also messages on Facebook and Twitter. It really means a lot. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. I always say I claim the whole month of December for my birthday. So thank you for being part of it and listening and paying attention to what I'm doing here at wordballoon.com. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2019.